The community has delivered its verdict on the new expansion, calling it the worst in the game's history. We haven't seen such deep disappointment in a long time. But I think many people are being overly dramatic about what happened. Today, we and the math guys will examine the current competitive scene by looking at the best decks for climbing the ladder and talk about why the situation isn't nearly as bad as it seems to many.
Time to rock and roll!
Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician and this is Holomancer.
Also, Chief Investigative Reporter Dora joined us this evening.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop. Guys, the first days after the release of the new set were extremely telling. The main feature of the new set was the return of quests, and every player quickly realized that these mechanics were a complete failure. The game first turned into Paladin Stone and then unexpectedly broke down.
In our view, nothing extraordinary has happened. This approach from the developers has become quite common lately. Despite the overwhelmingly negative reactions, it's still too early to write off the game, at least until the balance patch.
I hope most players understood that the new cards looked very weak. We personally saw this new set as yet another important step toward lowering the overall power level, although we haven't seen any confirmation of this from the dev team. The lack of communication leaves us only to speculate and hope. But players have long been asking for lower power levels, and if this really is a priority for the developers, then releasing weaker sets followed by a big nerf patch makes sense. According to polls during the reveal season, the community in general rated the new legendary cards lower compared to previous expansions. Moreover, I'm sure many ratings were even optimistically inflated in light of possible nerfs that would allow the cards to shine. Players trusted that the devs would make sure the new cards had room to be experimented with. But in reality, the entire set once again landed on unprepared ground. For reasons I don't understand, the developers chose to wait for a wildfire to ignite instead of trying to prevent the spark in the first place. The same thing happened just over a month ago after the release of the Emerald Dream miniset. Before that, we saw a similar situation with the release of the Perils in Paradise miniset. As you can see, according to regular polls in our community, over the past year, the launch of new content has increasingly been accompanied by disappointment and frustration with the meta. The post-release period, which should be the most exciting, ends up being a total letdown either because the environment wasn't properly prepared for the new cards or because the introduction of a few toxic new synergies poisons the entire play space.
I hope that active firefighting will begin any moment now and that we'll see massive nerfs instead of massive buffs. Otherwise, there will be no logic in the actions of the development team. What's more, once again the power level of the cards is extremely uneven. All traditional playstyles look very weak, but combo tools, as always, feel excellent. All of this is strongly reminiscent of the Great Dark Beyond, where the main archetypes were almost useless while combo decks were incredibly powerful.
The meta-defining deck turned out to be Quest Paladin. Its popularity in the first hours after release got out of control. And there's nothing surprising here either, since this quest looked a full tear stronger than the other new strategies.
The rise of such a dominant deck forces players to immediately adapt and search for effective countermeasures, which once again kills the experimentation season. What can destroy a fast deck that snowballs its power? Of course, an even faster deck. And this led to the creation of an aggressive meta. Overall, the situation is very similar to the release of Emerald Dreams, when Aggro Demon Hunter paralyzed standard format and forced the entire meta to build around it. In both cases, the new powerful interaction was lying in plain sight, and predicting the consequences was extremely easy.
This time the meta adapted faster than before. Quest Paladin is rapidly losing its edge, but even 2 days later its influence across all ranks still hovered around 25%. Let's take a closer look at the Troublemaker. This build is the most stable and has stood the test of time. From an initial win rate of over 60%, it now sits at just 52%, one step away from legend rank. The archetype uses the highest number of new cards. The deck's cost is very modest, requiring only 2 legendary cards, and Grunty is even optional. Efficiency factor is a metric the guys came up with to measure how rational crafting a deck is in percentage terms. It's based on the ratio of cost to win rate. 44% is not an impressive result, since a low cost cannot make up for a weak win rate.
The strongest card is not the quest itself but Tyrannosaur. This card is a prime example of turnaround mechanics. Once you manage to handle the flood of Murlocs and even secure the board, this card actively erases your progress by wiping out your advantage and creating a new wide board. And if you manage to deal with the situation again, the spell Submerge map could discover new copies of them. This is the kind of gameplay I hate with all my robotic heart.
Another new deck is Loh-cky Druid. Overall, it's an extremely linear and simple to use combo deck built around the same turnaround interaction. The idea is simple. Loh the Living Legend reduces the cost of minions, the Ceaseless Expanse becomes free and clears the board, while Playhouse Giant can also be played on the same turn for 0 mana. This whole combo can be pulled off as early as turn 4, and in some cases even on turn 3 with a perfect mulligan. Even if this combo doesn't immediately win you the game, you still have a few more powerful minions in reserve to finish the job. Overall, it feels like Dungar Druid but even more destructive and toxic. Of course, pulling off the combo that quickly doesn't always happen, which is why the deck struggles against aggressive decks. Its win rate sits at 52%. Combined with its incredibly high cost, this results in an efficiency factor of 0%. This means that if you're a returning or new player without a healthy stockpile of resources, there's no rational reason to craft this deck. On the other hand, this build uses almost no niche high rarity cards, so for regular players, putting this deck together is quite budget friendly. Most likely, you'll end up playing this deck just to get some fresh gameplay experience. The only problem is that this playstyle can get boring very quickly.
The new spell Resuscitate has had a huge impact on priest archetypes. The card looks insanely strong in a pool of otherwise very weak cards. You may be surprised, but at the core of its power is also a turnaround element, although it's not obvious at first glance and works through minions you abuse for value and then predictably bring back to life. For 5 mana, you don't just get a board of sticky minions, but with Catch of the Day, you also get the ability to immediately neutralize your opponent's board advantage. All of the class's best strategies have adopted this new card, including Menagerie Priest. Overall, the playstyle is not much different from menagerie strategies of other classes. You know them very well. This is perhaps one of the best decks in the current metagame.
More inventive ways to abuse Resuscitate were discovered by the new Protoss Priest. In short, the idea is simple: resurrect a sentry with Reborn to make your mothership cheaper. The deck has its own clear game plan but no strong win condition, which is why I enjoyed experimenting with this build so much.
The deck truly doesn't look broken, and this shows in the win rate. At high ranks, it sits at just 52%. Another drawback is its high cost. You'll need 4 legendary cards and 4 epics. That's far too expensive for beginners or returning players. But if your update cost is low, I do recommend giving this strategy a try. Among new cards, this deck only uses the spell Resuscitate, and it's worth crafting, because it made another new archetype possible. Wilted Priest is an extremely toxic combo deck that, unlike the Protoss strategy, relies on a clear win condition. The core concept is to abuse the death rattle of Careless Crafter to generate as many bandage spells as possible. In the late game, you can use them in combination with Wilted Shadow to heal your opponent while dealing damage. But to generate enough bandages, you'll need some time, and here comes another toxic interaction. Sleepy Resident, thanks to its death rattle, can lock down even the biggest enemy minions, while Rest in Peace guarantees it comes back to life every time. And this is terrible, because you can basically prevent some archetypes from playing at all. The deck's main advantages are its high win rate and extremely low cost. An 80% efficiency factor means that any player with limited resources simply can't ignore this deck if their goal is to climb the ladder. Overall, I love trying combo decks. They offer new experiences, which is very important to me. But when a combo deck is too powerful, it quickly becomes extremely popular and creates a toxic environment. Unfortunately, I can't not recommend this deck, but at the same time, I wish it wouldn't get even more popular.
There's one more deck that players with limited resources can't ignore. Aggro Demon Hunter has practically broken the efficiency factor by scoring 115%. This deck is both too efficient and too cheap at the same time, which means it lets you climb the ladder as fast as possible without spending many resources. The deck is like a sponge that absorbs all the best pieces from various synergies, including parts that were originally meant for the new quest archetype. The main downside for me is boredom. I'm not a fan of the aggressive playstyle, and playing this deck for a long time feels extremely tiresome. But if you don't like aggro archetypes, you still have to play this deck for at least a while to better understand how to counter it. This is a must, because it's the new king of the current meta.
Next up is Death Knight. This class is represented at high ranks by several effective strategies, including various menagerie builds, but the most effective at the moment remains Starship.
The deck has hardly changed at all and doesn't feel fresh. At least the Navigator and Reanimated Paradox are the only new and optional cards, and that's boring. Note the cost too. This deck is far too expensive and not efficient enough to justify crafting. But if you already have almost everything you need, then this is a very good choice for an effective game.
And you might be surprised, but that's it. We've just listed the complete roster of viable builds for reaching Legend rank this July. This is the whole picture. Never before, with such a huge card pool, have we had so little deck variety. There's simply nothing to play, and what new options we do have are terrible from a gameplay perspective. The paradox is that Quest Paladin, the author of this competitive environment, turned out to be a mediocre deck, is rapidly losing popularity and effectiveness, and is gradually leaving the meta, leaving behind the twisted consequences of its brief dominance.
Honestly, we have no idea what the developers are trying to achieve with moves like this. I can only assume this is a deliberate attempt to stir up the meta. They must have known the new cards would be too weak compared to previous expansions, but some meta would form anyway. Then they'd break it with a balance patch and force players to look at the new cards in a different light.
Overall, this approach forces players to adapt to regular changes and constantly try new ways to play. Maybe this is a way of artificially expanding players' collections. You can't just play one deck for 4 months, because everything shifts dramatically from patch to patch, then to a mini-set, and so on. It all feels like there's no real goal to build a balanced, healthy competitive environment anymore. It's more important to create waves that bring significant changes. And as we can see, it only takes one new deck to trigger a wave. Even if its overall power isn't outstanding, it just has to be noticeably stronger than the rest of the new strategies, and this was obvious to players even during pre-release events. If our assumptions are correct, then the balance patch that should have accompanied this set has long been ready, and the developers are deliberately waiting to trigger a new wave of changes. In this case, artificially delaying the patch simply creates an extra meta shake-up. We've seen this approach more than once before. But this time, the problem is that one not-so-powerful deck created not just a wave but a full-scale tsunami that wiped out everything in its path. So our thought is that the developer's true plan will only reveal itself after the balance patch, and only then should we draw conclusions about this new expansion.
Guys, I really want to believe you're right, but there's one factor you didn't consider in your theory. Just tell me, what would a balance patch even need to include for quests to become at least slightly more competitive? Most of them look completely unviable and pointless. For them to work, they'd need to be released under entirely different circumstances, in a different game.
Dora, I get what you're saying, and unfortunately, we don't have a counter-argument for your point.
All we can do is hope that the balance patch makes at least a few quests playable. If the weakness of the new cards and gradual nerfs is the price for lowering the overall power level, then we're ready to pay it in full. But we can't shake the feeling that the dev team isn't fully consistent in these intentions. It's like they take 2 hesitant steps forward and then a desperate step back. Either way, we have no choice but to wait for the patch notes to understand the developer's true plan, and honestly, this patch could either completely crush all hope or strengthen our belief that the team knows what they're doing and has a concrete plan.
Dear viewers, what do you think?
Share your thoughts with us in the comments.
Do you believe the new set, in its current state, is part of some bigger plan from the developers?
Or do you think the team has lost control of the game environment and can't shape it into anything coherent? Let us know your thoughts below and join the polls in your community tab. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to support our content and stay updated.
Traditionally, we want to express our boundless gratitude to our sponsors.
Dear friends, your help is invaluable. We will be grateful for any support.
Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really hope that we will have the opportunity to get in touch in the next video.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.